Welcome to Burn On, Not Out, the podcast for founders and CEOs who are done being the bottleneck. I'm Brooke Dukes, and each week we expose the structural patterns that slow execution, overload founders, and keep decisions routing back to the top. And we install clear decision rules, defined ownership, and operating discipline that scales. Let's get into it. I want to describe something that happens so often in founder-led companies. Your team all of a sudden stops bringing you problems. Not all at once, but gradually. And then they start bringing you options instead. 2 or 3 potential directions laid out, waiting for you to pick one. They start framing things as just wanted to keep you in the loop, instead of asking for a concrete decision. They start pre-approving their own work before they show it to you, so that by the time it reaches you, it's been reviewed 3 times at least internally. From the outside, this can actually look like your team is getting more capable, more self-sufficient. You might even think, this is awesome. The delegation is working, and they're learning how I want things done. Well, it's not. It's not awesome. The delegation isn't working. What you're actually watching is your team quietly learning that their decisions aren't safe, that something they finalize has a good chance of getting reopened, and that the right move, the low risk move, is to keep you involved before anything is truly done. And here's the part that's hard to hear. You taught them that. I know, it was hard for me to hear too. You didn't teach them to play it safe on purpose, and probably not even consciously, but you did. And today, I want to show you exactly how it happened. Because until you can see it, until you own it, you can't stop it. So let's take a look at how the trust broke down. Think back to a decision you reversed in the last few months. It doesn't have to be a major strategic pivot. It could be a normal operational call. The direction of a project, a vendor choice, a pricing decision, just something that your team had already moved on from. Then something came up. Maybe some new information surfaced, or someone on the team raised a concern. Or maybe you just started second guessing yourself at 3 a.m. and by the morning you decided to reopen it. So you called a meeting and you announced a change of plans, and the team adjusted. They stopped the work they were doing, they shifted course, and they got back up to speed in the new direction. And on the surface, things seemed fine. But here's what actually happened underneath that. Every person on the team that made a note, not a written one, but a behavioral one, the note said, decisions aren't final until the founder confirms they're final. So before I put in real time and effort into executing in any direction, I'm going to make sure it's actually final. And the truth is, that's a completely irrational response to what they're experiencing. They worked hard in a direction that got changed. So the smart move going forward is to pre-check before fully committing, to keep the founder up to speed and close to the work so there are no surprises and redos. And just like that, without anyone deciding it, without anyone announcing it, the system changed. Your team stopped owning their decisions fully, and they started managing their exposure instead. One reversal. Sometimes that's all it takes. And imagine when 1 becomes 2, and 2 becomes an ongoing pattern. Most founders I work with aren't reversing decisions once in a while. They're reversing them multiple times a month, some weekly, and each one compounds the lesson. Here's what this pattern looks like once it's running inside your company. And I want you to be really specific here, because a lot of times, founders see these things and they misread them entirely. Your team brings you options instead of recommendations. They did the work. They thought through the problem, but instead of coming to you with a recommendation, here's what I think we should do and why, they come with 2 or 3 possible directions and wait for you to choose which one you like best. That's not indecisiveness. That's called protection, or CYA, cover your ass. They've learned that having the founder make the final call is safer than owning it themselves. Another part of this pattern is your team over documents before acting. Everything gets an email thread to loop you in. Everything gets written down and sent upward. Again, looks like diligence. But what's actually happening is they're creating a paper trail that shows they kept you informed. So that if the decision gets reversed, it's on record that you were looped in. So you must have been on board. Don't be fooled. They're not documenting for clarity. They're documenting for cover. Here's something else that happens. Your team pre-stalls. Before they bring something to you, they sit on it for a day or two. They refine it. They anticipate your questions and answer them in advance. They run it by a peer first. And none of this shows up on your radar. It just shows up as, okay, execution being a little slower than it should be. As things taking a little bit longer than you feel like maybe they should. You're not seeing what's happening in the stall. You're just feeling the drag. And here's the piece that hits founders the hardest when they really sit with it. The team that's doing all of this, the one that pre-checks and over-documents and brings options instead of recommendations, that team is not underperforming. They are performing exactly as well as your system allows them to. They're smart professionals making rational decisions inside a structure that taught them to behave exactly this way. The ceiling on their performance isn't their capability, it's your structure. So why don't founders catch this earlier? Why does it take so long to notice? Or why haven't they noticed it at all? Well, there's a few reasons. The first is that early signals look like good things. A team that pre-checks looks engaged. A team that over-documents looks diligent. A team that brings multiple options looks collaborative. None of these things set off alarm bells. They actually feel like signs of a healthy, well-communicating culture. It's only when you zoom out, when you look at the execution speed, at how long decisions are taking, and how many conversations are circling back to you, that's the pattern that becomes visible. And by the time it's that visible, it's been running for a while. The second reason is that reversals feel justified in the moment, and they often are individually. New information may have surfaced. The original direction had a flaw. You caught something the team missed. But each reversal on its own has a reasonable explanation. The problem isn't any single reversal. The problem is the cumulative message that multiple reversals send to your team over time. That your decisions have an expiration date. That finalized doesn't really mean final. Most founders aren't thinking about the cumulative message. They're thinking about the specific decision in front of them right then. Each individual time, in each individual circumstance, and that's exactly how the pattern builds without them even seeing it. The third reason, and I think really the most important reason, is that despite the pattern, the company is often doing okay. It's still growing. Revenue might be increasing. The team could be expanding. By those external measures that founders typically use to gauge how things are going, things look fine. But the slowdown is happening underneath the growth. Execution is harder than it should be. Decisions take longer than they should. Momentum is heavier than it feels like it ought to be in the moment. The founder's calendar is filling up. But because the growth is still happening, founders tend to attribute the friction to scale, to the natural complexity of a bigger company, rather than to a problematic structural pattern that's been building for months, maybe years. The good news is, this is not a you problem. It's a structure problem. And those are completely different things. A you problem would mean that you need to change who you are, how you lead, become less involved, develop more trust, work on letting go of control. That's the conversation most leadership programs want to have with founders at this stage. And it misses the point entirely. A structure problem means the system you're operating inside doesn't have the rules it needs to produce the behaviors that you really want to have. Decision rules aren't defined. Ownership doesn't come with real authority. Finalized doesn't have a clear meaning. So the team fills the gaps with the safest and lowest risk behavior available, which is keeping you close to every decision until it's truly done. The correction isn't learning to let go. The correction is installing the rules that makes letting go structurally possible. When decision ownership is defined, when the people on your team know exactly what they can decide without you, and when they trust that those decisions will hold, the behavior changes. Not because they became more confident, but because the structure made confidence the rational choice. That's the shift. And it happens faster than most founders expect. Because the team isn't the problem. They never were. They've been waiting for a structure that actually supports them. If what I described today sounds like your team, go watch the CEO Decision Reset. The link's in the show notes. It walks you through the full structural pattern and gives you a tool that you can use immediately that starts interrupting this cycle. And if someone in your world is leading a team and wondering why execution feels harder and heavier than it should, share this episode. This is the episode I wish someone had put in front of me years ago. If you are ready to install the full correction, Success by Design enrollment is open right now. Charter spots are limited to 25, and when they're gone, all charter member benefits are gone as well. I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Burn On, Not Out. If decisions are still flowing back to you, don't just take notes. Install structure. Watch the CEO Decision Reset to see exactly how the founder bottleneck forms structurally and what gets installed to remove it. The link is in the show notes. Until next week, structure before strategy.